Hi, Photo Tristan here, and in this video we're reviewing the Rolex Submariner 5513L series. And this is a bit of a unique Submariner in that it is the last 5513 that was ever produced. This one was released in about 1989, after the 5513 had been in production for over 20 years, since really the 1960s. The Submariner was really quite popular. It was quite popular tool watch, military watch, etc. It was even James Bond's watch back in the day. And so here's the box that it came in. The color doesn't really pick up that well in the video, but it's a really nice Rolex green. Underneath here, I've just put the extra links in a small little envelope, but I did want to show you what the box looks like. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the watch. This watch is sort of a sweet spot watch among 5513s in my opinion. First, because it's the last version of the 5513, so it's collectible in that respect. But also, many people refer to this as a transitional model, because what Rolex started doing is they started applying white gold surrounds around the hour markers in order to protect the luminous paint from smearing, because under pressure they found that earlier versions of the Submariner would actually smear the paint when people would go diving with them. So that was an end of an era for that kind of design, because ever since then, up until now, you've got the applied markers with the surrounds on the hour dial, on the hour markers. This dial also is a glossy dial, whereas prior versions of the Submariner were a matte dial. And so that also represents a transition. In addition, this one has the domed acrylic crystal. But at the same time that this watch came out, in other models, Rolex was starting to produce models with the sapphire glass crystal, which they do now. As you can see, the bezel is omnidirectional, so the bezel actually turns in more than one direction. It doesn't click. That's also how the Submariner used to be. Nowadays, they click and they only go in one direction, counterclockwise. But as you can see here, the tritium sort of lume is a nice cream color, and also something to be aware of, or something to watch out for when you're looking for a vintage Submariner, is the hands and the hour markers match in terms of the amount of fading they have. That was something that really attracted me to this particular watch, because sometimes you see them where they don't match. There's a difference in fading between the hour markers and the hands. Either that means the hands have been replaced, or they just have faded at a different rate for whatever reason. But if you look at this one up close, the fading is exactly the same on the hour markers as well as the minute hands and hour hands. So having them matched is something that was important to me. Also, the condition on this one is almost like new old stock. I got it from the original owner, and apparently he only wore it like 10 times or something and pretty much stored it for like 24 years. So looking at this one, you can see the bezel gradation is still really sharp. The case and everything about this watch is in almost like a new old stock condition. So it's really just a nice condition watch, and that was something that I really appreciated about this watch. And this is just really a nice wearing watch indeed. It's just really comfortable. You can almost not even feel it when it's on. It has what they call the open holes case. So if you want to change to a NATO strap or something like that, it's very easy to access the spring bars, because you just basically put a little spring bar tool in the holes in the side of the case, and you can just do that in about 5 minutes or something. So it's really very easy to do that. The movement in this watch is the Rolex 1520 movement. And of course, this is a dive watch, so it's rated to 660 feet or 200 meters. The watch has proven to be very reliable and precise in terms of keeping time. And going forward, the dial and the hands should fade really nicely and just only get better and better with time, almost like a fine wine. Now, it should be noted that a few years before this watch came out, Rolex actually had a problem with defective dials. And nowadays, that is what people refer to as a spider dial. Some of the earlier glossy dials actually started cracking. The black paint would just crack. And if you look at it from certain angles, you'd actually see those cracks. So that's actually a defect. And some of those are quite highly collectible. I think people like when Rolex has defects or fails or something like that, those watches end up being sort of collectible. But I was glad that this one didn't have that, because I don't like the look of those watches. I think they did fix that issue after about 1987 or 1986 or so. So watches after that, glossy versions of the Rolex Submariner 5513 did not have that problem. When it really comes down to it, I think vintage Rolex Submariners are highly sought after in general because they represent not only a bygone era, but also they preserve a change that many don't agree with that Rolex made in subsequent years. If you look at the Rolex Submariner of today, it definitely looks quite a bit different. It's larger, it's heavier, and it just seems sort of, for lack of a better word, not as swanky or cool. It's definitely more sort of gaudy in a way. So I think for these reasons, a lot of people really appreciate the vintage Submariners quite a bit, and also for the historical reasons as well. Each of the vintage Submariners have a story to tell about how they were used or the person who used to own it. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. Many of them show definite signs of abuse and wear or usage. And we definitely see that in many of the military Submariners that people collect that were actually used in combat and battle and things like that. So thanks for taking a look at this watch with me. This has been a look of my Rolex Submariner 5513L series with Glossy Dial. I really think it represents the end of an era for Rolex, and therefore this watch is certainly something special.